Hey everyone, this is Chase Riley with CR Media. This is my friend Seth Hackett. This is Bad Booking, episode 3. If you missed episode 2, we talked about the Royal Rumble. We talked about Dynamite, Punk and MJF's love letter to Seth. We brought up the Jake and Paul White, the Jake Paul and Dana White feud. We didn't get too much.
That would also be good.
Weird. We didn't get too much into that because of time constraints. So definitely, if you haven't listened to episode 2, go back and listen to it. It's a great one. Obviously, episode 1 too. If you're not sure where to find us or where all the places are that you can find us, because if you're listening, you obviously know that you found us. So all the places that we are is going to be on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, TikTok. And then you can also listen to the podcast. You don't have to watch these streams. You can find that on Google Podcasts, Spotify, and Anchor. The username is CR Media 1988. Super easy to find. Other than that, I guess we can jump right into where we left off last week, man. So Jake Paul and Dana White have kind of been in a war of words the past month and a half, I guess.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing because, like, I don't think anyone saw that, like, the big feud that we would be focusing on for Dana would be Jake Paul. It's kind of Francis now, but it's a smart move by Jake Paul to kind of bring the work it where, you know, he's bringing up fighter pay. He's super concerned with all these dudes, and I don't know, maybe he's being 100% genuine. I'm not sure. It also keeps him very much in the spotlight, so it's kind of just a smart move on his own to kind of like keep his name in the mix. And even though he really doesn't have like a fight really planned next, I assume maybe they'll go back to like the Fury fight since that originally got canceled. That's how we got Woodley too. But it's kind of interesting because he brings up a lot of good points, and some of the stuff he says, it'd be cool to see, like, if somehow he could get Dana to come through with a lot of this stuff, because he's also said that if Dana agreed to new stuff like this, to pay his fighters more and this and that, that he would actually step in the octagon and quit boxing, and I would like to see that. Not that I think he would get absolutely rolled, but the fact that he even threw that out there makes me think that maybe there's something to this. Maybe he is actually being genuine, or maybe he's just honestly playing the smart part where he knows Dana's not going to read any of this shit. So him actually having to get in the cage and dudes and get rolled in front of America, it's not going to happen.
No, I don't think it's I don't think it'll lead to that. My whole thought on it is Jake is a troll, obviously. Him and his brother, this is what they do. They've been social media influencers, YouTube personalities, for over 10 years. That's what they're famous for. They're famous for trolling people. Now, I'm not saying that this means that Jake isn't a good boxer. We don't know if he could do mixed martial arts. Like we've talked about before, there's been plenty of guys that were good at one thing.
Say that he,
yeah.
I mean, it's a world. I don't see him stepping into the cage and being successful unless he did like extensive training for a while. But dude called out Khabib. I don't know if you saw that. He called out Khabib at one point. Khabib just kind of
he called out he's called out Masvidal. He's called out Conor. He's called out Khabib.
That seems like he's very eager to go to an early grave.
Yeah. He's, you know, this is how they're making money, man. You know, he made he made over $3 million in that last fight.
Supposedly even the second Woodley fight supposedly even did pretty well on pay-per-view according to them. I mean, they don't really release those numbers, so it's kind of a weird thing.
Yeah.
But I've seen some people say, with connections to that industry and stuff, to say that said that the pay-per-view didn't. There was reports that it tanked and it didn't. So to even get people interested and see him fight Woodley again when the first fight wasn't spectacular is, it's a credit to him. He clearly knows what he's
doing. Yeah. Now him calling out Dana because of, claiming that fighters deserve better. I honestly think he's doing it for attention or clout, as the young kids call it. But I absolutely agree. There needs to be a better look at it. We've talked about a fighters union before. Jake even went so far as to make a rap video about it. I think it was called "Fuck Dana White" or "Fuck You Dana White," one of the two.
I think you're right. I think it was something along. Very creative.
Yeah. I guess.
I don't know how long it's going to think that one up, but I'm assuming not long.
No. I and like I said, I glanced at it. I don't have a lot of, knowledge on it. I think he had like some skinny, bald dude in the video that was supposed to be portraying Dana White.
Character, man. Like, I'm not the biggest Jake Paul fan. Like, I really could care less about a lot of the stuff that he's doing. But like I said, man, the dude knows how to get himself out there and get his fights promoted, and it helps that he seems like he actually has some skill. But I didn't watch the video either, but I'm sure it was wild.
Yeah. So I pondered if I even dare ask the question if we think that Jake could, eventually make his way over to the octagon. I don't see that happening. But who knows?
If he knows better, he won't. But at the same time, like, I mean, if dude gets paid, why wouldn't he? The only problem is like I don't even really think that Dana will show interest in that stuff. Like, I don't think Dana is like he doesn't really have a history of like being super into like these like freak show type fights. He did do it. He did do it once with, why am I blanking? But he did it with Couture. He fought the boxer. Dude got smoked. He did it basically to prove a point that like you can't just sit there and say you can just anybody can get in the cage and do it. I mean, he did it there. I think it's kind of seen as that for like a little while, but Kimbo actually ended up being like at least fairly decent. I mean, Duke could fight. Yeah. He wasn't for, MMA stuff. But then there's also like, there was like a real thing of like him and Ito Ortiz had like a big back in the day, and they actually were gonna fight. But that was like a different era. I don't think he's like super into like some of these things. Like, I don't think he just would let anyone just like hop in the cage and do it unless like. I mean, Jake's gonna want a lot of money to do it, and he should, because I think Jake also knows. Like, if you watch some of his interviews, any of the interviews that he said where he mentions about getting in the octagon, like it definitely seems like he kind of has an understanding of like, hey man, like this is the ultimatum. If you want to see me get, I'll help these fight, and then I'll come to your world and I'll get smoked. Like, whatever helps the fighters. And so, I again, like, it kind of throws him back in the spotlight. So I do agree with you. There's definitely a part of that in it. I don't think he's like doing this just 100% just the fighters. There's at least like, there's some space here where he's definitely trying to, it keeps himself in the news, in the headlines, and
yeah, absolutely. Smart. They him and Logan know all about that social media influencer world where, promoting yourself on YouTube, promoting yourself on social media, and that's what he's doing. He's promoting himself, whether he's full of shit or he's 100% genuine.
He's got. It's an easy thing to kind of harp on because it is like a real issue, and so it's not like he's going out there and saying like this crazy stuff. Like he's bringing stuff up, keep him in the headlines, but also makes him look very positive because like these issues are like a lot of problems that the UFC's had and MMA in general have had, for years now. I mean, at one point, the UFC, for like how much they took off, was actually paying fighters pretty well considering. But now that they're, like they signed the big deal with ESPN, so they're making $1.5 billion total off that deal. They're making $300 million a year. It's a 5-year deal. So they're bringing home huge business from that. They just broke a bunch of records for profit. Last year, they broke the record for most pay-per-view buys, and the fighters are still only getting 16% of revenue when, you compare that to baseball, which baseball has, they're 48%. The NBA is getting 49%. The NFL is getting 48%. And the NHL is a direct 50-50 split. So when you actually, when you think about how they're only getting the 16%, I mean, that's insane. And these dudes are fighting like, some of them have to 4 or 5 times in the UFC, which is the highest level, just to stay afloat in their regular lives. Like, it's pretty crazy. And so again, like Jake's, he's beaten home something that'll make him look good, keep him in the headlines, and at the same time, like it's actually a real issue that is actually a problem. So it makes him look like he's definitely on the right side of the fence too.
Yeah, well, and I don't necessarily think that he's 100% genuine in it. But like you said, I agree. It's and we've harped on this before. There it is certain issues, or it is definitely a big issue within the mixed martial arts world, especially in the UFC. Because they don't allow them to do the sponsorships like we've talked about before. There's no union, there's no fighter association to make sure that these things are negotiated. So, I before we move on, I guess my question would be, do you see it changing anytime in the next couple of years?
I don't think the next couple of years, no. I think there's a chance that these things could change. However, this is a very similar issue to like the, pro wrestling where, I mean, they don't have a union either. It's been talked about for decades and it's just never really come to fruition. And a lot of the issues are the exact same, where a lot of these dudes are afraid to really bring it up because they're afraid that whatever promotion they work for, that they're basically going to end up being blackballed. I mean, we see similar things when people bring up these huge topics in other sports. When you look at like, current stuff with like the NFL, the Brian Flores thing, which is obviously very different, but like he brought up something that was a huge deal, and now he's pretty much assuming he may get blackballed from coaching ever again. It's the same with a lot of these guys. They don't want to bring up these topics because they know people like Dana White and big promoters, they don't want to fight a union because it hurts their have to pay guys more, and like they can't go around and tout that they make all this money and blah blah blah. And so I don't really think it's going to probably change within the next couple of years, but I do think little minor things are changing. But I think that there's always going to be issues in the way, which, like I said, guys could get blackballed, or they could get it held against them without even really being a big enough issue to where people bring that up. And until like big fighters like Conor, like John Jones, really push this cause like pretty heavily, because those guys can do these things without any fear. I don't really know how it gets done. And what's crazy is like a lot of people think like, well, the big fighters don't want to be attached to it for whatever reason. But the big fight, like even Conor, who's making, millions and millions of dollars, dude's making an insane amount. So like on the surface, it seems like people want to attach his name to this stuff. Really,
yeah.
I mean, this would affect points on pay-per-views. It would, if they came up with a CBA, it would It would give fighters points on pay-per-views. They would make, and also it would help. This is kind of a different thing, but it would help. It would help product overall because these guys would want to promote more. They would want their pay-per-views to sell because in their CBA, if they had one, it would probably have a place in there that they would make more money for if they sold more pay-per-views. It would also help a guy like Conor who's making millions of dollars on every card that he fights on. He would be actually stand to make more money. So it's not like it really hurts these guys, but they make so much money now that they probably think, well, I don't, why deal with the hassle? But like I said, that some of these obstacles will still kind of be in the way. There's an issue with maybe even like the geography of a lot of these fighters. It's kind of hard. Like whenever baseball is going through their issues now, like baseball, for instance, like they during spring training, these guys are going to be in the same places. They can get all these guys together in a room and they can have a discussion on what they need to do and what their goals are. Fighting, like dudes live in all kinds of different countries. They usually don't have a time where they all meet up. And then at the same time, the fight world is so much different than all the other sporting worlds that like these dudes have like, some of them have legit issues with each other. So to get two guys in a room and like to discuss and put their differences aside, sometimes that stuff's just hard to really overcome. So I don't know if like it could be done that way. There is an organization that I do want to touch on that's supposedly starting next year in 2023 called the World Fight League. They've said that they're going to have a CBA. It's going to be a 50-50 split. They're going to have guaranteed contracts. They're going to have health insurance. They're doing it basically structured like a regular sporting league where they're going to have a regular season and then they're going to have a playoff. So I don't think there's really like any championship belts, but there will be like in each weight class that they have, there will be a year-end champion. They're going to have a board of governors. They're going to have a commissioner that oversees all the rules. And they're hoping to sign 190 plus fighters this year. And their first event is supposed to be February 5th, 2023. Now, the guy who's kind of doing it is a guy who used to be, and I can't remember his name, but he used to be with the World Series of Fighting. He had left there, so he kind of has an understanding of like what goes on in these types of companies. He's been on Aaron Hawani's show. He's talked about it a couple times. He had made a claim that he wanted to start signing fighters in January. I tried to find information on that. I couldn't find anything. They had actually signed anybody, so who knows? But it's things like that. Like just as an example, like if that I saw and has real like backing and funding, which supposedly it does, and I think yes, those are steps that eventually these things could start changing. But those things have to get off the ground, and there's a possibility I think that we could be a ways off from a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, that's crazy, man. I didn't know about that World Fighters League. I hadn't heard about that.
Well, it got brought up like a few months ago, I know, and I didn't really look into it too much. And then when we obviously wanted to talk about this, I looked into it a little bit more. And like I said, it's an interesting theory, but at the same time, like we don't really even know who's backing this. Supposedly, there's also going to have they're going to have 4 different, I guess, conferences, kind of, where there's like North America, South America. They want to have Asia and like the Oceania, stuff like that, and then they want to have one of them was like Africa and somewhere else, and those were and they were going to have so many fighters per thing and so many weight classes or whatever, so that way they could they could do like the regular season type stuff. And like I said, it's one of those things that like it's good in theory, but with anything like. We've seen how many NFL or not NFL, but how many football leagues have we seen come and go? How many times have we heard that this new wrestling promotion starting or whatever? And, it seems like it's going to work and it sounds good. And then all of a sudden it kind of fizzles out. So for me, we'll see. If it happens, cool. But let's get there first.
Yeah, and get it off the ground. I did want to mention before we move on from that subject that anytime a reporter has asked in a press conference to Dana White about it, Dana White is very, very arrogant about it, says, you know what, hey, this is how we've structured our business. This is how we run our business. If you don't like it, go somewhere else, because there's plenty of people to take your spot. And to a certain degree, I do agree with him a little bit that he would have enough people, because that was what I was going to say. Sorry, that people have disagreed with that and said, you know what, you're not going to find, if the big name fighters stood against you and said, hey, we're not going to take this anymore, we want change, then, a lot of people have said then they would have no choice but to restructure. Whereas Dana says, no, we can go find, 50 fighters or 100 fighters to come take your place that will gladly take the money that we pay you guys. So,
well, yeah, I mean, he's probably right. That's the world we still live in. I mean, we're very much, Ariel Helwani says a lot, and I do agree with him that we're still very much in like the Stone Age of MMA. I mean, it's still very early. It just got early and got put in the forefront. It got kicked off really in like 93. I think that's when the UFC started, and then it really got in the forefront in the mid-2000s. And yeah, there's a ton of dudes out there because the pace sucks literally everywhere else, and even kind of sucks in the UFC when you really think about what they probably should be getting. There's dudes all over the place that, if so-and-so wants to leave because they think they can figure something else better out, then yes, somebody will definitely take their spot because everyone's chomping at the bit. That's another issue, is like a lot of these people don't want to speak up because in that world, your prime's not very long. And if something were to happen and all of a sudden you're not fighting for 2 years, I mean, you may be done at that point. And that's another reason why they need guys like Gregor and John Jones and whatever, Dana Cormier, whoever, big names in that world to really step up and fight for this stuff. But until that happens, and then there's also the issue, they're independent contractors. They'd have to go to court. They'd have to probably get it legally changed where they're considered full-time employees. So it's definitely an uphill battle, and it's a steep hill. I think it could get done at some point, but the original question was in the next couple of years. I don't see that happening.
Yeah. Well, I mean, NFL players are independent contractors as well. And they've found ways for it to work. And I lied. This is not the last thing I'll say about it, and then we'll move on. I will say this. There's people out there that will say, they do it with football players. They do it with basketball players. I'm sure they would do it with fighters that say, you make $3 million. That's enough. And to that, I would say, you know what? It's easy to look at that when because it's the forefront of what we see. What you don't see is the billionaire owners and stuff like that own, 7 houses, 3 yachts, stuff like that are holding such a big piece of the pie that the guys that only make $3 million or make $3 million and it should be enough, have, they did most of the work to make that pie. So, I just, if you're one of those people that say, hey, Connor made $35 million, Connor should be fine. And then realize that Francis, who we talked about last week, made $600,000, and think, well, that's more than a lot of people will make in their lifetime. Like I said, do a little bit of research on that and just see how much of that money that they've worked for is getting distributed to the higher ups, the billionaires.
Well, just like my last pointing off that is, we got to stop. You can't compare these types of things in sports and stuff to like how much people make in the regular world. Like it's not necessarily about that. It's about what's fairness, what is fair in that world, and what is obviously what's going in the UFC and MMA in general isn't fair. I mean, to make only 16% of the revenue when all these other big sports, when the UFC wants to tout itself as being on the same level as Major League Baseball or NBA, whatever, and then to only give their people 16% when all these other, I mean, it's just not comparable. So to sit there and say like, well, you make $600,000, that's more than I make. It's like, okay, well, these guys are also going through fight camps and like they're fighting in a professional sport where they're at the top of their game. It's not the same. So people who do say that, I mean, it is. I agree with you. It's pretty ridiculous. And again, it's not so much about, it's not about you. It's about this. It's about that world and what's fair.
Yeah, and it's crazy, man, because when I was younger, when I was, a teenager and even into my early 20s, it was right up until the CBA in 10 years ago. Well, I guess about 11 years ago now, the CBA agreement went up with the NFL and the lockout happened. And prior to that, I was all pro, like, these guys are babies. These guys get paid all this money to go out there and play football, and they make so much money already. Like, what's the deal? And then I read an article about an NFL owner who, it was Dan Snyder. I wasn't going to name it, but I was like, who cares? It's everybody already knows how much of a piece of shit Dan Snyder is. So who cares?
It's just not surprising that like you fucking outed the dude. And it's like, it's Dan Snyder. And it's just like, oh, I probably could have just guessed it.
So, this guy wrote an article that was like, hey, you think the players are the bad guys here, but let's take a step back and let's realize that there's 32 owners who are billionaires, that the players aren't billionaires. They're millionaires. And, griping for more money sounds like, a lot, but when it's billionaires who are saying, what, we don't want to pay you any more than what we have to, is, it's kind of, it's kind of like one of those, WTF moments where it's like, really? So Dan Snyder, like I said, 4 yachts, 7 different houses. Dan Snyder himself didn't do it, but the Washington Redskins have been known to take season ticket holders to court who can't keep. Huh?
They're the Commanders, bro.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, my bad. The Washington Commanders, back then, were known to have their legal team go after season ticket holders who were behind on their season ticket payments to recuperate the money. Obviously, just like any business, if you don't pay your bill, it gets sent off to collections, whatever, but a couple cases that were named at the time that stood out to me were 90-year-old women, 70-year-old men, et cetera, et cetera. And that was it was a big deal. Because like I said, it was meant to show everybody like how these billionaire owners will fight tooth and nail. They'll spend more money than they do paying their employees to pay for, lawyers and legal fees to go through all this. So like I said, it's one of those things where if you are one of those type of people that say, hey, they make enough money. Like I said, do a little bit of research. It's crazy when you look at it. And this is completely different from football because,
it's way worse.
Yeah. Like, these guys are literally locked in an octagon, getting their heads pounded in, or getting the oxygen choked out of them, and getting handed 16%. So,
it's like from like a legal standpoint, like again, they have no CBA. And the NFL has a CBA, and they have a players association that fights for them, and the UFC does not, or the fighters in MMA do not have that stuff. You're basically fighting on your own for what you think you deserve, and they just kick you to the curb whenever. They could do all these weird things to your contract. They can opt into certain things depending on your contract is structured and basically make you fight more fights than you want to because you signed some deal, or like if you get hurt, they can freeze your contract because you didn't, whatever. It's all the stuff that we see in the news, like even currently about Major League Baseball. It's all that stuff, but it's magnified by 1,000, dude. It's way worse because there's no real structure for them. There's no way that they don't have a main face fighting for them like all these top sports do, but they make millions and millions of dollars and basically give their fighters peanuts.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was exactly what I was going to say is these, football, baseball, these companies that have, or these sports that have CBAs and players associations that have a group of people to go to the table to fight for them, and they still have to fight these. There's still lockouts. There's still disruptions in negotiations because they don't want to pay up. Imagine how it is for the fighters because they don't have anybody. They've got themselves. So
yeah, it's definitely a rough deal.
Yeah. So moving on, tomorrow, Saturday, February 12th, is the UFC 271 pay-per-view on ESPN Plus. I did read earlier, thought it was a little weird that they just announced it, but I guess there's a scheduling conflict, and Joe Rogan has been pulled from the event. So
I saw it too. Last I saw is there was no real indication on why. I mean, we could assume with all the stuff going around. I mean, he's kind of been in the forefront of some controversies recently, but I saw that MMA Fighting reached out to him and tried to get a comment, but he had not. So I don't really know why, but I saw that too.
Yeah, it just says due to a scheduling conflict, which is weird. The UFC doesn't seem to be fazed by the controversy going on with Joe Rogan right now. I don't know if you saw the press conference where, Adesanya said something about it. Like I said, they don't seem really fazed by it at all. But I do find it really weird that a scheduling conflict. I mean, Joe Rogan's, a big professional and has always been professional about what he does. So I just find that weird that he would be like, oh, hey, there was something on my schedule that oversees UFC. So
I know that he cut back his schedule like not that long ago, where it's like however many 12 cards a year, something like that. So I mean, it's really not like the most insane thing that they've like asked him before, maybe, and like he's been like, oh, like I probably won't go to this one. And I know he doesn't really travel to like other countries and stuff anymore, but this one does seem weird that it was like the card and now it got announced that he got pulled. So who knows?
Well, so the three fights that we'll break down is obviously the main event, Adesanya and Whitaker, Derek Lewis and Tuivasa, and then Jared. I had trouble with this earlier.
Cannonier,
and Derek Brunson. So just to kind of, do we want to start with the Cannonier and the Brunson fight?
We could start with that one. I think we added the 3 of the top fights. There's some other interesting fights on the card, but those are obviously the top 3. They're the top 3 on the card. That's probably the one that probably has maybe the least amount of attention. Obviously, the main event's a big deal. Derek Lewis is a huge fan favorite, so I think people are always interested to see him fight. But
absolutely,
that I think is kind of flying a little bit under the radar, and honestly could be the better fight of the night. Maybe. I think the main event, obviously on paper, should be really good, but it could be better than the heavyweight fight. So we can talk about that one first.
So Cannonier is favorited by 160 over Brunson. Those are the Vegas odds.
He's plus 160.
No, he's minus 160.
I don't bet.
Yep. I so I have started, and it is extremely addicting. So
Really?
yeah.
I've always kicked it around, but I just can't. I don't know.
You know what, man? Like,
I feel like that's a deep dark rabbit.
well, and let me take a step back. I have started like small bets. I'm not doing anything big. Yeah, that's and that's
It's
what I was going to say.
when we were 12, dude. Don't start smoking weed, brother. Next thing you know, you'll be doing heroin. It's called a gateway drug.
So yeah, I've been paying a lot of attention to it because it showed up on my feed on like TikTok. So now it's like all over the place on my feed on TikTok.
Are you gonna bet on any of these fights? Are you gonna bet on any of these fights?
I don't know, man. I don't know. We will see. But anyways,
I'd give you some advice, but I got nothing in that round, dude.
So like I said, Cannonier is a favorite. He's my pick as well. You know, he's on a roll, man, and he said it himself, and I know you said it before we started recording here, that if he wins, he's in line for a title shot. He said it a little while ago. He made it clear, you know, hey, if I win, I think I deserve it.
I think he should be right there too. I mean, he's ranked third in the middleweight division. He's 14-5 overall, but he's 4-1 in his last 5. He also, you know, he's finished. He has a TKO victory over David Branch, which is, you know, whatever. He also has a TKO victory over Jack Hermanson, which is a good win, and he beat Kelvin Gastelum, which is also a pretty good win. I mean, Gastelum gets some big fights. He's still ranked in the top 10. And he's a big, powerful dude. And like I said, he's ranked third. I think he probably gets the winner of the main event. And he deserves Brunson's fourth. And Brunson, you know, he's good. He's a scrappy fighter. He's a little late in his career to go on a run like this, but he's been very good in his last few fights. He's actually won 5 straight, but the quality of wins aren't nearly as good as Cannonier. Cannonier, I think, on the feet, I think he probably knocks him out. But again, I think it could be a good fight. If Brunson can get him down and they could, you know, they can get dirty on the ground. I mean, Brunson's got a real chance to win this. I mean, he's a talented dude, but I just think overall, I think Cannonier is probably the better fighter, and I think he probably knocks him out.
I didn't have a knockout victory, but I could see it happening, definitely. So I think that means both of us are going Cannonier.
Yeah, I think Cannonier probably wins this fight. I think it's probably the result, the most interesting result too, and I think he does get a title shot after it.
Think he fights Adesanya after this?
So you just think Adesanya is gonna beat Whitaker, huh?
No. That's
sounds like it to me.
Well, so then we've got Derek Lewis and Tuivasa. Lewis is the favorite by minus 190. I'm again going with the odds there. I'm going Lewis as well. And to be honest with you, I'm going Lewis because I like Lewis a lot. I want to see him succeed, and you know he's got a great personality. He's a good fighter, and you know he's my favorite. He's one of my favorites. So
I like Lewis too. I think this is an interesting fight because it's a big step up for Tuivasa. He's ranked 11th. Lewis is 3rd. And I think probably for the long term of the heavyweight division, I think the more interesting result is Tuivasa winning, because I think it shakes things up a little bit. I think it leaps him up into maybe, you start talking about with another win or two, maybe he gets into the title picture. And we've seen Lewis in this mix for a while. And I just always, I think he's here below like world champion status, but he is very good. He's also had some fights that have been very odd where he didn't really do much when he fought Francis, which, is whatever. And then he had another, I can't remember who it was against, but he had another heavyweight fight where he basically didn't do it, ended up knocking him out in like the last 5 seconds. It was wild. But I think the most interesting result is Tuivasa, but I think it's a big leap up for him and probably beats him. Again, he's 6-1 in his last 7. And I think Lewis is probably overall the better fighter, but again, he's had some weird ones, some weird injury history. So, and Tuivasa doesn't fight scared. I mean, he's an aggressive dude. He's not afraid to get in there and mix it up. But I do think maybe this is a step up, a little too much for him. And I'll take Lewis, but it's the heavyweights too, dude. Like, all it takes is one shot.
Yeah. Speaking of heavyweights, Chael got on social media today and said that Stipe put on 20 pounds of muscle and is ready to start hitting people.
Well, he hasn't fought since he lost to Francis. And he's wanted Francis. Yeah. He also wanted John Jones at one point.
Yeah.
How does Chael know that? Does Chael train with him?
I have no idea. I was scrolling through and somebody showed a clip of it. And I saw some people retweet it on Twitter that he just made a video that said, hey, I know Stipe has put on 20 pounds of muscle and talked about how hard he's hitting. So,
well, that's interesting. Stipe's always fought thinner at in that division on purpose. I mean, I think he's always wanted to be around 230, and he's always fought around there. So if he did that, I mean, it'd be interesting to see what he looks like when he comes back. He hadn't fought in a while, and he's gone through some wars. So, like, if Stipe were to come back and not look like the same dude, I wouldn't totally be surprised. But if he came back and started knocking dudes out, I wouldn't be surprised by that either. So we'll have to see. It's definitely interesting, though.
Yeah, Stipe, that's what he said. He said Stipe has put on 20 pounds of muscle, and he's at 249.
Huh. Well, that's also, unless, who knows what he's really doing in his free time, but, like, that's also him, like, theoretically out of a camp. So I'm sure, I don't know. Like I said, it's an interesting thought, but it's also one of those things that, like, I need to see him get back to really, like, process if does that help? I mean, like I said, he's always fought around like 230. I mean, you always hear like, oh, dude put on 20 pounds of muscle or 15 pounds of muscle. Sounds good, but he may get in the cage and be slower. He may feel heavier. And again, dude's been through some wars and he hadn't fought in a while now. So he's getting to the point where it's like, I got to see him. I got to see him when he comes back. I'm very interested to see what they do with him because, your mind tells you that he should be right there, but it looks like the UFC is just not that eager to really get him, back into the mix that fast. And they've kind of been okay doing different stuff with Francis. All this stuff happened, but like I said, I'm interested to see him.
So here's a direct quote from Chael. He says, "I got an inside scoop. I guarantee you guys haven't heard this. You might remember Stipe after Francis Ngannou said, 'I'm stopping everything and I'm putting on 20 pounds, right? 20 pounds of muscle is a very different Stipe. I just got the inside scoop. Just talked to Stipe's wife. Stipe is at 249. You're welcome.
Well, let's go then. Let's get that boy back in the cage. Then let's see it.
Yeah.
If he's Stipe comes in and he wants to start rolling heads, then let's go. Let's mix it up. Let's get him back in there because I like Stipe. I'm a Stipe fan, but like I said, that's one. It sounds good, but let's see it.
In my quick Google search to find that quote, to find that direct quote, there's already people, shipping him in Mr. John Jones. So,
well, I think if John Jones is going to heavyweight, they got to make him against Francis. I know the Francis thing is up in the air. It's very, very weird. Supposedly Dana met with Francis the other day, I think, to discuss stuff. But I think Dana also basically said that they still don't really know where that stands or where even the heavyweight title is, currently. We'll see. But if they can do it and they can get Francis back, it's got to be Francis and Jones. But Francis ends up vacating the belt. Then, yeah, Jones Stipe for the title. I mean, let's go.
Yeah, that would be definitely interesting. When's the last time John fought?
Oh man, it's been a while now. He had his own issues with the UFC, and I don't know because he said he wasn't getting paid enough. And they've had their back and forth. But now he's been talking about potentially going back up, or potentially going to heavyweight. So it's kind of a weird thing. Let's see here. Jones's last fight was against Dominic Reyes in 2020.
Yeah,
So it's been 2 years.
Yeah. Interesting.
It's been 2 years, and I mean, I've seen pictures of him recently. I mean, he definitely looks heavier. So I think whenever he comes back, I think it is going to be heavyweight. I just, probably depends on who's strapped up. If it's Francis, if it isn't, I mean, Jones is the big fight for all these dudes. So, I think they got to figure out a way to get this done between him and Francis. They just got to. That's the biggest fight they got.
All right, so the last fight, or the main event, the big fight for UFC 271, and we talked a little bit about this last week. My pick hasn't changed. It's still Adesanya. Adesanya is the favorite by minus 280 over Whitaker. I'm excited for this fight. I don't see it going. I don't see Whitaker taking it and it going to a third fight. I think Adesanya takes this. If Adesanya wins this, he will further cement his legacy as one of the best middleweight champions. So he'll surpass Mr. Silva. So,
well, I disagree with that, but I do think he will. I don't really see a reason to pick Whitaker. I have a lot of respect for Whitaker. He's super good. He's super consistent. He's good in all areas. I just think Adesanya is probably on a level than Whitaker is. And I rewatched the first fight, like I said last week. I don't think Whitaker necessarily fought like a good fight. I don't think he really tried to take him down. If he can get him in the into some deep waters and kind of get him on the ground, then this could be a very interesting fight. And I don't think that there isn't a path for Whitaker to win, but there's just really no reason to pick against Adesanya. That dude's so good. He's so crafty and creative. I think he probably stays out of the danger zone of possibly getting taken down, and he probably just picks him apart on his feet and could finish him. But I think it probably goes the distance, and I think Adesanya probably wins on points. Probably wins fairly easily, but again, I don't think there isn't a path that Whitaker could win. I think he could. Just a better fighter.
Well, we will find out tomorrow, won't we, my friend?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that card. It's actually a pretty solid card, and like we kind of talked about here, the top 3 fights are really good. So I'm excited for that.
Yeah, I need to figure out how I'm watching it. Obviously I'm going to watch the prelims on ESPN Plus, but I need to figure out what I'm doing for the actual card. So
You want to pay $100 million for the? Yeah,
fuck out of here.
It's only $100 million.
So in the world of boxing, man, we haven't touched a lot on boxing on here, and I'm gonna explain why. Because I've always mentioned, as again, I'll reiterate, we sprinkle a little bit of boxing in here. And you know what? There's not a whole lot of big stuff going on in boxing right now. A lot of these big fights are set for April. I don't really have a lot of interest in breaking down, like bottom cards. But in a little bit of boxing news, it was being told that Canelo will be finalizing a 2 major fight deal that'll be worth $85 million. It's going to be one in May and another one in September. He was already making $30 to $35 million a fight. This will be a bump, but to put into perspectives, boxers who are starting out in the business make they fight about 5 to 6 times a year, and they make anywhere between $6,000 to $10,000 a fight. So that's I make more working in insurance than those guys make on that. So
yeah, it's another weird deal, but Canelo's the biggest name out there, so it's not like him getting paid. I mean, there's definitely plenty of people who's willing to fork over the money for him because, I mean, dude's huge in that world right now.
Yeah, he is. He's hands down the best boxer in the world right now. So,
well, it's probably him or Fury. I think Fury probably is like Fury. I think a lot of people grab a little bit more because he's a character. Plus, he's a heavyweight that always plays a little bit better. Yeah, dude, the Canelo deals, it's pretty wild, and I think what they're really doing is they're kind of they're shooting for him to fight Billy Joe Saunders, and for him to hopefully get the WBO title. But that's the big fight. His next fight, I think, is more of like a stepping stone, and that'll be the first fight of the deal. But they're hoping that this leads to like an even bigger fight, and also it'll be their plan is to have it, like you said, they'll have it in May. They'll have it, Cinco de Mayo weekend, which is always going to be a big deal, especially for Canelo with him, having Mexican descent and all that. But yeah,
it's funny you mentioned that. I was gonna say it's funny you mentioned about Fury, being kind of like a big personality. Canelo showed that recently, and I would love it if they let him do that more. And not let him, but I would love to see if maybe they wanted him to do that more. He had a guy interrupt one of his press conferences and ask him when he can get a title shot. And, Canelo, this was a few months ago. But Canelo was like, man, you fight nobody. And he was and Canelo was just like laughing it off. But then the dude tried to like push back. And then Canelo was like, get the fuck out of here, man. And
he has like as he's gone along, and you know, Canelo does have a little bit more per he did when he was first coming up. When he was first coming up, dude was kind of like seemed like he was made of stone. Like he was pretty stoic, but he kind of has one. He's kind of a character. I've seen a couple things. He could be a pretty funny dude. No one's on the level of Fury. I mean, Fury's a nut.
Oh yeah, Fury is he's insane. But it'll definitely be interesting to see where those two fights will put Canelo as far as where he'll be at, because by the time he does the second fight, like I said, in September, it'll be very interesting to see where he's at then. So
yeah, I mean, like I said, he's the biggest name in boxing other than maybe Fury. And again, I think they're trying to get it to the Billy Joe Saunders fight, who's undefeated, another big name. And it'd be for another title. I think that's the big fight that they want. And if Canelo wins that fight, then, I mean, he's got to go down as one of the all-time greats. I mean, dude's really kind of owned this era, especially for his weight class and what he's been doing. So,
well, I think that puts us off the boxing part. Like I said, not a whole lot going on right now, but I made it a point to kind of like emphasize on Dynamite this week, because Dynamite last week was great. That main event kind of put it there, but that main event between MJF and CM Punk took Dynamite last week and put it on its back, and that match carried that show. There was a few other good spots in that show, but without that main event, that show's not really anything to write about.
Yeah, I thought that too. I thought there was some good stuff on that show, but I thought the main event definitely was the highlight. And it was.
Yeah,
I thought that's what made it a great show, was because that match was so good and it took up a bulk of the second hour. But this Wednesday was like I mean, they were hitting on all cylinders from.
Yeah, this Wednesday it was the overall show was it was fantastic. I
thought it was one of their best Dynamite.
I agree. So the show started off with MJF and the Pinnacle. Man, that thing was fantastic.
They did a lot of really subtle stuff in that thing that I thought was really creative. Like the Wardlow coming out with like nothing. He didn't get music. Yeah. He was like basically still still their bag.
Yeah. He was like their bag carrier, but instead of carrying their bags, he was carrying those cutouts.
Yeah, those cardboard. And they're just so obnoxious.
Yeah. And then MJF playing up how he beat CM Punk twice. I don't know if you saw that. So I sent this video to you, and it was very hard because the person who posted the video posted it in a private group. So I was like, man, like this video is gold. I want to share this with Seth. And there's that app out there called Cameo where you pay a stupid amount of money. And to me, it's a stupid amount of money. I'm not paying $125 for Ric Flair to tell me happy birthday or whatever, and that's
Rick's.
no. Who's that commentator that works for Impact now that used to work for WWE?
Josh Matthews?
No. He just recently got picked up by Impact.
Oh, he was on NXT for a long time, and then he was on
Todd. Is it Todd Phillips?
Yeah, but he's going by like his real name now or like a different name. But yeah.
Well, so I was looking on there. He's $125 to do like a happy birthday or a shout out or whatever. Anyways, the video I sent was MGF doing it for somebody's wedding. And the beginning of the video just fucking cracked me up, man, because he and this has been his energy all week. And he carried it into Dynamite. You know, he starts out the video and he's like, hey, so-and-so, this is MJF, you know, goes down all of his accolades. And at the very end, and he's like, and I beat CM Punk in Chicago 2 times, bitch. And I'm just, you know, it's just crazy.
He's so obnoxious with all this stuff, and like you just knew that he was going to hype up that he beat him twice, and then for him to come out with those 2 cutouts, and like the one is just him like having him in the choke, which like he cheated. Yeah. It's just like
the other one was him sitting cross-legged.
Yeah, when he sat on him, or not when he sat on him. That was like a week before, but when he did the Punk, you know, cross-legged sit in the ring. Like I thought that was brilliant. Yeah. And then the whole I mean, it was just dude was on a different level of like obnoxious. He comes out on the throne.
Yeah, with people carrying him.
He like
and then
he makes out with that girl.
Yeah, he kisses the one girl, and then he turns around and that girl just plants it on him, and they sit there for like an obnoxiously long, like.
He's got all this stuff, just like the aura of him being just as like this super obnoxious heel. The dude just got all that down. I mean, I really think that he's hitting like a completely different level of his character work and even his in-ring stuff. I mean, the match against Punk was, I mean, it was insane. I loved it, but I mean, I think. I don't know. And then the way they're playing out, like the whole Wardlow turn, it's such like a slow burn that every week I kind of think like, well, they got to do it soon because like it's just like the fans want it so bad, and I still do think they got to do it soon. But every week, like they do something that's a little bit more creative, and it's kind of like, well, if they keep doing little things like this, like they can kind of draw it out even a little bit more.
Yeah.
But yeah, dude, the show was nuts.
Yeah, and just to kind of pump back a little bit, you know, I know that, you know, I know you're not on Facebook a whole lot, you know, but if you look at like some of the stuff on social media, like fans record, maybe they share it on Twitter. It's crazy because he doesn't break character at all.
No. And what's is like there's like stuff out there of him like when he's backstage and stuff, he's like a super nice dude.
I haven't seen it.
There's stuff.
That's what I was saying. Like when the camera is rolling, he is Maxwell Jacob Friedman. And I'm better than you. That's I mean, I watched him do it to a handicap guy. That's what I was getting ready to talk about. Is there's this video of him doing like autograph signings, and he's doing it with this handicap guy, and you know the handicap guy's trying to give him shit back. Like, and that was kind of like the joke of the video is just like watch him like dog on this guy in a wheelchair and watch this guy take it, but or watch this guy give it back to MJF. And it was like, yeah, he gave it back in a little bit, but like MJF just laid on him. He's like, you fat piece of shit. Like, when's the last time you saw your dick? And I was just like, oh my God, dude, like he's a paraplegic.
It's so like, ridiculous. Like he gets away with it. Like no one ever tries to MJF. And sometimes he says some like pretty like insane stuff. But it's just like, dude, like are we sure this is like, but no one says anything. I'll laugh it off.
There was another video on social media that like was making its rounds where somebody put their kid on the table. And the kid's like 5-6 years old. And they're like, yo, we want to get a picture with you and it, with you and the kid. So MJF is taking the picture and he flips him off.
Oh, I've seen.
And the little kid,
Yeah.
and the little kid holds up too. And then MJF is like, "No, you moron!" I mean, it's just like
he's got the character like down again so well that, like he's again like he can get away with this shit because everyone's just they're so cool with it, and like people love to play along with it. That
even his own parents.
The thing is, and I saw this theory, and I kind of subscribed to it, is that like I've seen the thought that like the reason he doesn't wrestle so much is because he's actually so like he's very good that like if he wrestled all the time, he would get cheered because like he's good. Like when he wrestles, people would cheer him, and because he's really good. So like instead of him wrestling more, he comes out and does character stuff more because he's such a prick that they'll keep booing him. But if he actually wrestles, like he's too good. So like people would like start really
he'd get over.
Yeah, he'd get over too much, and like people, so they kind of like try to like only give him to you in small doses, but they give you the character more because he's such an asshole. And it's like that'll still get him booed because like he'll never stop being an asshole.
So just breaking down this segment, after that awkwardly long kiss with that girl,
it's so like cringy. That's his real girlfriend.
It is okay.
Yeah.
that was just like, it was just one of those things where I was like, God, I was like, damn, dude, like this is really long.
Yeah, it was like, Jesus Christ, bro. But then like I saw that and it was just like, okay, well that like at least like makes some sense, but it's just like even if it wasn't her, like I wouldn't put it past him to like do that as like a obviously like ask her beforehand. Like
she did it to him. That's what was so funny about it.
Well, that's
the other girl. Like the other girl just pecked him, but then when he turned to the redhead was gunning for him, yeah, and she just laid it on him, and he just took control of it. It was awesome. And so it gets better because he gets in the ring and he starts doing this little shuffle, and then they all like get together in the ring and they start jumping and hyping each other up, and even fucking Tully gets into it.
Yeah, which is so
and everybody's in it except for Wardlow.
He was like rolling his eyes the whole time. He was like clearly. Yeah. But I mean,
all like
every week they bring up that like Wardlow's contracted, so it's not just like you're not sitting there wondering like, well, why doesn't he just beat the shit out of this dude? It's like what's like so he's like he can't just do that. Like he clearly wants to do that, but it's like well. Max pays this guy. So there's got to be something that is pretty big that happens that makes him just like snap.
Yeah. What it like so and we'll get into that. So then after they have this stupid fucking obnoxious thing where they're all jumping up and down like a basketball team, getting ready to take the court. MJF, of course, brags that he beat Punk twice. And then he goes and like he's talking about like the person that helped him and the person that deserves praise and blah blah blah, and he thanks Sean Spears, and like you could just see the look on Wardlow's face where Wardlow's just like, are you kidding me right now?
But again, Wardlow does a good job of like. He keeps like doing like subtle facial things where like you can tell he's just like what's like really like this dude's like, but also like not too much where it's like he's like overplaying it. It's just like you can tell on his face he's like, well, why wouldn't this piece of shit do this to me again?
Like he's used to it by now.
Doing the announcement, Wardlow like starts walking towards the middle of the ring like, oh, he's talking about me. And I'm going to celebrate or whatever. And then he says Sean Spears and he stops like mid-step and he's like, what the hell? Like Sean Spears, like I'm the one who gave him the ring and did all that stuff. So I thought they played that out like perfectly.
Yeah. The buildup for this thing it's just getting hotter and hotter and hotter.
Well, and then what's interesting is like it kind of crossed my mind. So like then Punk comes out, right? And he interrupts it and he comes out with Sting and Darby. And Punk does the thing where he's talking and he's saying he wants a rematch with the guy who beat him. And the swerve is that then MJF thinks he's talking about him, but he's really talking about Wardlow. And he's trying to needle Wardlow to get him to turn because he's like, hey, dude, like that's the dude who's really like doing the heavy lifting here. And I want to fight him. And it also pisses off MJ. It's kind of a brilliant spot. But it did kind of cross my mind. And like my initial thought was like, you know, they do the thing where basically like FTR wants the rematch. And, you know, they kind of in the segment was saying like, you know, like we'll give you the rematch, but you can't have Sting and Darby. You can't have either. My initial thought, obviously, which was a lot of people, was that like Punk's going to get Samoa Joe. And that's going to be one of the surprises of the night. Obviously, it wasn't, which we'll get into that later. But it did cross my mind that what if Punk picked Wardlow? Like, couldn't that have been one of his options and then been like, all right, dude, like, here's your shot. Like, obviously what we got was awesome and like the match was fantastic. And this would have been more storyline driven and the match probably would have played out way different. But like when that happened, it kind of crossed my mind like that could have been a cool way of getting like either the turn or even more of like nudging it in that direction where it's like now Punk's putting Wardlow in the position of like now you can kick his ass because he told me to pick someone different and I picked you. So now let's go. Obviously, it didn't play out that way, but I thought that was like an interesting thought that they could have gone with. Obviously, they're going with some different direction, which all this has been great. So, and me, like do what you got to do.
So yeah, Punk teasing a tag team partner. My thought was Samoa Joe. I saw a couple of people online mention like they thought it could have been the Briscoes, and I was like, but they wanted him to pick a tag team partner, not pick a tag team.
I thought that too at first because like I was kind of confused at first. I thought it was going to be another like I thought it was going to be a 6-man tag, but once I figured out that it was just FTR doing the challenging, that it was like, well, my main thought like I thought it was going to be Joe.
So then there's a backstage segment with Darby and Andrade. And hopefully they're pushing closer to something with them. Anything involving Andrade is money, which is so crazy because
I'm not like the biggest fan of like him having like the HFO necessarily, but I'm not the biggest fan of that in general. But the weird thing is like I feel like the way that like Andrade kind of talks, like because he obviously doesn't have like the best of English, but he takes his time with everything. I think it weirdly kind of like fits his character because he talks like slower. And yeah, I think we're getting to an Andrade versus Darby, but I kind of wonder if Andrade is going to win the TNT title and win that ladder match at Revolution. And then we're going to get into an Andrade Darby feud. I'm kind of curious about that because it seems like maybe that's the direction that we're going with this. But either way, dude, like him and Darby, that's going to be a banger when we get there.
So, and it's crazy, man. Like, obviously I don't feel like this anymore. And I didn't feel like this shortly after, but when Andrade very first showed up to NXT, I wasn't a fan. I didn't know a lot of his work. We got to see it in NXT, and his feud with Malachi Black, in NXT was awesome. And it turned me into a believer and it turned me into a fan. And I love his work. And so just the idea of him and Darby, like I want that, like, give me that. I'll take that.
Yeah. That has, once that happens, yeah, my hopes are going to be very high for that match. Cause it could be like the sky's the limit. That could be really good.
Yeah. So then, Wardlow comes out and is facing the Blade from the Butcher and the Blade. And it's hilarious because you can see Wardlow's taking his frustrations with MJF and the Pinnacle out on his opponents every week. And it's getting it's funny because he's getting frustrated with Shawn Spears because Spears, like in this match, he kept doing the power bomb, and Spears kept telling him like, "Yo, that's enough. Like, stop." And
Yeah.
then the power bombs are getting
like Spears can tell like, hey, dude, the fans like this. Like, stop doing that.
Yeah, like it's like nobody else in the Pinnacle wants Wardlow to have fun. So, he's like, hey, like, calm it down, like, finish it off. But then Shawn's bitch ass gets in the ring every time and whacks him with the chair, sometimes multiple times.
Every time it kills me.
Yeah.
Every time he hits a dude with a chair just one time, and just like his relief. Like,
yeah.
I mean,
he's
dude,
like, man.
It's just like the best thing in the world to him. And he just like, and it's him also stepping on like Wardlow's shit. Like Wardlow's he's getting over the crowd's cheering, and then Spears just comes in with the chair and hits the guy one time. And it's just like the most satisfaction a man could ever have.
It just cracked me up watching him like go, whoa, like calm down, not so many power bombs, finish him off, like you've done enough. And then as soon as Wardlow wins and Wardlow's celebrating his win, here comes Shawn Spears to start whacking the guy with the chair. It's like, you just told him it was enough. Like,
yeah, I look forward to those little things like every week, because him just sneaking in the ring every time and hitting him with the chair. It just slays me every time.
So and I'm not skipping over a segment, but I'm gonna bring the segment up when I bring up I'm gonna bring the segment up that involved the return when we talk about the other return. The Inner Circle meeting, the town hall meeting or whatever it was called. When Jericho very first said it last week, I almost rolled my eyes. I was like, whatever, like this is stupid. And I don't know, maybe it's just me wanting to shit on it, but and I like the Inner Circle. I love the Inner Circle. But it was just it was just the way Jericho said it. Jericho was just like, we're gonna have a meeting next week, like, like, okay, whatever.
Yeah,
and
like,
then
I kind of felt that way too, but like I also think that like either they've seen it or it's intentional, but I got a feeling it's kind of not. I kind of think that Jericho sometimes just doesn't realize that some of the shit he says is like pretty corny. But they definitely played it up more in this, where it was like Santana called him out for being corny. So like I'm glad that they're doing something with that, to where it's like Jericho says stuff that's like kind of cringy and it's like pretty lame. And I like that, like, now like the other people in his own group are like, bro, like that's lame. Like you're kind of lame. And they're kind of playing that into it. And like, it's also like, I just like that they're at least like doing something with that, because some of the stuff Jericho does says it is pretty corny. I like Jericho, but like this whole babyface version of Jericho just hasn't really been for me. And they should have broke up the Inner Circle a long time ago, I thought. But if it kind of led us down this path to where like maybe we kind of like now we're getting Santana and Ortiz into a good spot, then I think at least we're getting like that out of it. And again, like I thought this segment was pretty good, and I did like how they ripped on Jericho for like some of the stupid shit he says.
Yeah, that was what I was going to say, man. Is going into it, I thought it was going to be corny, and then Santana and Ortiz took the microphone, and I thought the segment was fantastic. My favorite line from Jericho was when he made the comment that he got the wrong members of LAX, and he asked Jake to pull out his cell phone and call Hernandez and Homicide.
Yeah, that was the best line from Jericho.
Yeah, that definitely made me pop.
Yeah. I thought Santana in particular was fantastic in this segment. I mean, that dude can cut a promo. I'm glad that they're giving him mic time with all this stuff. My only concern is they got to win next week. And
Yeah.
I'm kind of worried that they're not going to. But the right call, I think, is for them to win next week. Now, I hope that happens. But with it being like Jericho, I don't know, man. Like, I hope he doesn't win, and then somehow it leads to like this tag match at the pay-per-view. Like, I think Santana and Ortiz should just win. I think there's a certain thing that they could maybe do with all this, is like maybe they could they got to somehow get like maybe Kingston involved if he's ready to go. Because I think we're still Jericho and Kingston. I mean, they mentioned him again in this promo. Obviously, he's been involved in all this stuff till he got hurt. So hopefully, he's win.
He was the cause of it was Kingston that was not the cause, but he was at the forefront of this split between them and Jericho.
Well, and that's they played off like a real thing. Like Kingston was with those dudes before Jericho ever got there, and they've definitely. I like that they've kind of made this story at least like kind of what we hoped it was going to, is like he is self-centered. Like he comes out to his own music, he basks in all like the music playing and the crowd going nuts for him or whatever, and Santana or Ortiz came out to their own stuff, and Jericho that because it's his, like he wants these guys to fall in line, and it is one of those things. Santana was cutting the promo, and he did say like, "What am I saying that's false?" And like the crowd was kind of like, "I don't think wrong with what you're saying. You're bringing up some pretty good points." And then Jericho's one comeback, which I think got overlooked, but the one thing he had to say was, "Well, wait a minute, like." What about that title shot you guys had that you lost? How was that my fault? And it's like, well, dude, that was a year ago. Like, what have you done for me lately? Like, we're supposed to elevate each other. And it's like every time Santana and Ortiz gets close to wherever they want to be, Jericho's getting into some bullshit and they got to have his back. So I thought that was kind of a little clever line that, on the surface made it seem like, well, what about that when you failed? Like, that was your fault. It's like, dude, that was a year ago. Like, that was a long time ago. They got one title shot. The Inner Circle's been together since 2019. Like, they're better than that. So, like, I think that segment did a really good job of like really pushing this stuff forward. And again, my only concern is Santana and Ortiz got to win next week. They just got to.
So, I agree, and I think they will. I think that's. The obvious choice that they go with that, unless, like you said, for whatever reason they want to, Jericho wins and they want to run it back at the pay-per-view, which I think I'd rather see. I think I'd rather see Kingston and Jericho at the pay-per-view if Kingston's ready to go by then, than to see a rematch of Hager and Jericho versus, Ortiz and Santana. But
I agree. I also think it's definitely the right call for Santana and Ortiz to win this match. I get worried about it, but I think Hager probably takes the fall. I think they probably want to keep Santana and Ortiz strong because I think eventually they're going to get a title shot. I think they're going to want to keep Jericho strong and not have him getting pinned because we're going to eventually get to Jericho and Kingston. And so I think like with Hager having nothing going on, I think he's an easy like fall guy here. And so like logic points in the direction that that's what's going to happen. But, these things just they worry me with Jericho being involved. And he is a big star. And again, I thought the Inner Circle should have broke up, when they did the Stadium Stampede thing and then they didn't. So I get worried, but the right call is Santana and Ortiz. And like, they should do that.
Yeah. So then next, is Isaiah Cassidy against the mystery person. And this was discussed all week. It was brought up after Rampage last week, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was when they first really announced it.
When Tony Khan went on Twitter and did the post about the Forbidden Door, a lot of people began speculating of who it could be. I know you and I debated back and forth on who we thought it was. I think we read, the obvious choice was Keith Lee, but then like as the days started to go by, like everybody started to say, "Hey, we don't think it's going to be Keith Lee." Especially with Tony gave a very vague, incorrect wording of the term Forbidden Door,
which he admitted to later, which is hilarious.
Yeah, and I'm going to bring that up. So, he had mentioned that this was going to be a Forbidden Door entrant, and they were going, it was going to be so huge that they were going to slam the door on the Forbidden Door. And from my understanding as a wrestling fan, I know wrestling fans tend to misuse a lot of wrestling terminology. But from my understanding on a Forbidden Door is somebody who works for another company coming in and working for this said company. That was always my idea of a Forbidden Door.
Well, and the original thing too was that it actually wasn't even invented by Tony Khan. It was invented by Hiroshi Tanahashi, and it was mainly about New Japan when they were kind of on the outs. And then it's kind of evolved into this thing that involves multiple companies. But yeah, he incorrectly used it, which is pretty
so. So the speculation was Keith Lee at first. Then it went from being like, well, hey, wait a second, like Keith Lee doesn't really fit the mold of a Forbidden Door entrant. And then it's like, well, who can it be? Then there was names thrown around like Keith Lee, Karrion Kross, Wyndham Rotunda, aka Bray Wyatt, Okada, Jay White, a bunch of different names were thrown out there. And I remember a day before Dynamite, I was sitting there just contemplating on it. I was like, what the only thing that I could think of that would be so big that Tony would build it up like that would have to be Wyndham Rotunda. And I debated on it. I sat on it, and I was like, and I think probably about a couple hours before the show started, I messaged you, and I was like, all right, that's my final guess. My final guess is Bray. And you told me you were like, final guess was Keith Lee. And you and I both debated, in the week. I was like, man, I think it could be Karrion Kross. And because I think Karrion Kross was a bigger name than Keith Lee, or as big. And you were like, no, it's got to be Keith. And then when the music hit, it was Keith Lee. I was hella excited, man. It didn't disappoint.
I'm just glad this dude seems like he seems happy. Like he came out, he seemed like he really soaked everything in, and the reaction was phenomenal, and then the match was great. But I think it's just cool to see him like come out and like he doesn't have any restrictions anymore. I mean, the stupid shit that WWE was having him do made zero sense. Like how they didn't make a ton of money with Keith Lee, like with how talented that dude is, and is always going to be like super baffling, but it is what it is.
So, and that was kind of like my whole thing too, man. If you see him live, it's crazy. Like that energy that he brings it's contagious. Josh went to NXT with me in 2019. maybe August of 2019. And Josh wasn't real big on NXT, or wasn't continually following NXT at the time. And man, as soon as Keith Lee's music hit and we all hit a bask in his glory chant, Josh was he was magnetized, man. Like, and it was just, like I said, it was just the energy he brought. So
Yeah. Definitely, that dude definitely has a presence. Like, he has a big aura. I mean, the way that he plays to the crowd, like, I mean, he's so good at like the small stuff, and then obviously like being that athletic at that size. And I thought Cassidy was like the perfect opponent for him. I mean, he's a smaller guy, and Cassidy's really. I thought he actually looked really match. They had like one spot where he was screwed up, like on the apron. I think he went for maybe give him a cutter over the ropes or something. He kind of missed, but I thought Lee kind of played it off well, and then they just kind of like went into other spots, and like I thought they did that really well. But I thought Cassidy in like this role like looked really good, and like, dude, like him and Mark Quinn both made Lee look like $1 million. I don't think the debut could have like went any better.
No, and I don't think that was done on accident either. I think that was that was planned perfectly.
No, I think it was a big spot for Cassidy, and I think that was them showing a lot of faith in him, and it paid off.
So the crowd pop was amazing. You could tell. I love it. There's this interview not interview, but there was a promo The Rock did a long time ago. It seems like a long time ago. It's probably 2002, 2003, where he rubbed his forearm, and he was like, when I do this, it means I've got goosebumps. And when Keith walked out, you could see him slapping his arm. And I could just, I assume in that moment that's what he was doing, was like taking that in, feeling those goosebumps, feeling those jitters. So that was a huge pop for him. And I've seen online, the majority of people online, wrestling community, have nothing but praise for it. I've seen a few Debbie Downers go, man, I don't see how he could be utilized, in that bolstered roster. And I don't think you'll have to worry about that with Keith, because for as excited as Tony was, and for Tony to hype that signing up as much as he did, I think you'll see Keith play a huge role going forward. I wouldn't be shocked if he won the Face of the Revolution ladder match. I just, for, like I said, for Tony to hype that signing up as big as he did, that lets me know that Tony believes in Keith Lee as much as he believed in Adam Cole.
I think so too, and I think just to kind of piggyback off that, like they do like a really good job of. They do a really good job usually of like putting guys in spots where like you go into that ladder match and it's like every dude who's going to be in that match, like you're probably going to feel like they could win,
Yeah.
And sometimes that's awesome. I mean, sometimes obviously like you go into certain things and like you want to create some sort of doubt. Like for instance, like when Paige won the title, like Logic told you he was going to be Kenny. Like we've been building to this for years, but like they add in little things to make you kind of doubt, like, well, maybe Kenny will win, even though it's not the most logical thing. Like, but sometimes they also do like a really good job of like, again, like building guys up to where like we're going to go into this ladder match and probably not really know who's going to win it. And like, that's also kind of a cool thing. So like Lee could win it. I mean, it seems like, with Andrade just basically point blank saying like he's going to be the champion. It makes you feel like okay, Andrade might win this, but then like, Keith Lee's in it and he made a huge debut and he did get hyped up a lot. So it's like, if Keith Lee wins it, then you're kind of like, cool, man, Keith Lee won it. Like, that's awesome too.
Yeah.
So I could see it.
Just to piggyback off of more of this Keith Lee thing, and I talk about that because of the people that doubt that Keith Lee is going to be utilized. If to anybody listening to this, I would say, I expect to see Keith Lee utilized the same way here that he was in NXT, which is really funny because you had made a comment that I made it a point to highlight because I wanted to bring it up on this show. That when Keith did come out, you were like, what did you say exactly? You said it's crazy to think that NXT, which is supposed to be the breeding ground for WWE, actually wound up being the breeding ground for AEW. Now, not exactly like that. You worded it a little bit differently, but it just kind of resonated with me when you said it. I was like, man, that's nuts because it is. If you look at where who all AEW has signed that has excelled, Andrade, and I'm not gonna argue with people about him being utilized. He's done some good things in AEW, and he's still there. He's still on TV. He's still doing stuff. Malachi Black, who was Aleister Black, Keith Lee now, and I know there's others, but Cole, Kyle O'Reilly. Did you listen to that interview with Kyle O'Reilly where he? I don't remember who he's talking to. I think he was talking to Renee, Moxley's wife, on her podcast, where he said that they wanted a lot of those NXT guys to become like, coaches now, coaches and trainers. And he was like, yo, I'm just not ready to go into that role. I'm still young. I still want to work. I still want to produce. So that was kind of like the deciding factor to him was to come out on this.
Yeah, because I think with a lot of those guys that it's obvious with Cole. I mean, Cole was like the face of the brand, and he's like obviously he's one of the best wrestlers in the world, and like they wanted to bring him up to the main roster to be like a manager and stuff. It's just like those guys are small and they just don't see it. So like that doesn't surprise me that he said they wanted him to do that, and like when there's this other company on the other side of the fence that's doing so well. And they do utilize smaller talent like that and has proven that it doesn't really matter. It makes all the sense in the world that guys like that come over, which like kind of brings up, Keith Lee in a way because he's obviously going to be one of the bigger dudes on the roster. And honestly, I think that's going to put him over even more because they don't have a lot of big dudes. I mean, Wardlow's one of their biggest guys, and he's not like if you put him in the WWE world, like he's not massive over there. But I don't know, man. It's just like it is pretty nuts that they've kind of missed on a lot of these guys. I mean, NXT used to have so much talent in it, and yeah, a lot of those dudes have they've jumped ship and gone to a different company, and it's just like the Keith Lee thing is utterly baffling. The Cole thing is insane when you actually go back and look at how they didn't know his contract ended and stuff like that, and it does seem that way. It's like. I saw someone on Twitter kind of, bring this up, and it was just kind of a funny little thing. It was like, why have your own like developmental thing when they have NXT? Why do they need their own like thing where they're developing talent and teaching talent when it's like NXT's doing it for them?
Yeah.
And they're leaving and coming over anyway. So,
well,
it's
and
kind of funny. Something just something that kind of crossed my mind. It was just like all these dudes like. Even the big ones, even the ones that you think can't miss. Like Ricochet should be can't miss, and they've missed on Ricochet. They shouldn't have been. Keith Lee even more because like that dude could have done anything with anybody, and they screwed.
Yeah,
that
there's this guy I follow on TikTok and Twitch. His name's Heel Kevin, and he was doing a watch along of Lucha Underground last night and on Twitch, and I jumped in his Twitch to watch it, man. And I used to love watching Lucha Underground. I've watched the whole thing, and he was watching an Iron Man match from Prince Puma, who is Ricochet, and Johnny Mundo, which is John Morrison. And dude, the match was just, I mean, it just fucking screamed like main event. I mean, it went and it went and it went, and it was like, it's crazy because it's not Ricochet. Like it's a guy, it's Prince Puma. This wrestler who wears a mask, and he's a main event caliber talent. And because that's not Ricochet. At least that's not who WWE has made me believe that Ricochet is. And it's crazy, man, because if you go back and you look at what they did with Keith when they brought Keith up to the main roster, they made him wear a singlet because Vince don't like fat guys, or guys that don't have a lot of muscle is what I mean, because Keith is not fat. Vince doesn't like guys that aren't chiseled. So they made Keith wear singlet. They changed his music. And then eventually changed his name to Bearcat Lee. And it's just crazy because you watch it, and I saw this video bite with AJ Styles interviewing with somebody. I think it might have been Ryan Satin, where he mentioned NXT is the breeding ground. When you get called up to the main roster, you have to realize that we do things differently here. You have to realize that we change things here. And I'm like it just seemed almost like a fall in line type of thing for him to say. I don't know. It just kind of rubbed me the wrong way. I was like, really, if they organically got over in NXT the way they were supposed to, why change them? They didn't change Sami Zayn.
And then, well, they didn't
change Kevin Owens.
The funny thing is they didn't change AJ Styles. So for him, it was kind of like they didn't change AJ. I mean, he's this dude. He wrestles the same. He wrestles virtually like the same stuff. He got to keep his name, like all that stuff. He even got to bring over his buddies. I mean, he was with Gallows and Anderson, and they played kind of off like the Bullet Club stuff. But I don't know, man. Like sometimes it's just like they brought him out, and sometimes it's just as simple as that. Like the dude came out and is just himself and is doing his own stuff that he did on the Indies or in NXT, and dude was already way more over in 5 seconds of coming out on Dynamite than he was in anything that the WWE did, other than the couple spots. I mean, he did the thing where they kind of teased him with Lesnar and stuff like that, and that should have got over huge. They should have made a bunch of money off stuff like that with him. And I don't know, man. Anyone saying that he's not going to be okay in AEW is nuts.
Here, bear with me 1 second, sir. I'm gonna turn off my camera real quick, but I've still got audio here. Gotta make sure that this thing stays charged.
You did the same thing I did episode 1, brother. You didn't plug in the.
Yeah, because like I said, I pulled out my wife's laptop because my computer that I'm on doesn't really get enough juice for me to do these streams. So I borrowed my wife's laptop, and when I did, I forgot to grab the charger. So and just to kind of continue where we are, like I said, we don't, I'm not going to pretend like I know everything about their process or whatever, but like I said, if these guys worked in a certain setting, why wouldn't you keep them how they got over? Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, Shinsuke Nakamura, all these guys stayed how they were, and Finn Balor stayed how they were in NXT.
Yeah, they should. It just shouldn't be as hard as they make it.
And that's what's crazy too is, Keith had crazy momentum when they did the three brand war, NXT, SmackDown, and Raw. Keith had crazy momentum, and so it was like, okay, you see what they've got down there in NXT with Keith. When you bring him up, why change him? So I don't know. I just, like I said, it's just very, very odd how they just kind of, they dropped on, they underutilized Keith Lee and tried to change something that was organically grown and sprinkled their zest on it. And it shows that they miss sometimes. I honestly believe in AEW, he'll be used to his full potential, much like what we saw in NXT Black and Gold. So
I agree.
Then, so the second surprise, which the second surprise of the night happened before Keith Lee. And when it did happen, a lot of people questioned, okay, is he the mystery opponent? He wasn't. We got a two for that night. Which I'm cool with. And I thought it was, I thought it was beautiful the way it was done. He comes in
really subtle, which was good. I thought they played it. I thought they played it. Another thing that, like the Keith Lee thing, I thought the subtleness of it, they played it pretty perfectly because it also didn't. Obviously, it's the Jay White stuff and it plays into the Bullet Club stuff, which it has numerous branches to it, but like. He did something that he attacked Trent, which goes back to New Japan ties, and then he just kind of like looked at the guys and Cole's like pumped or whatever, but he didn't really play in anything. You still kind of don't know, like, is he really for Cole? Like, did Cole screw up? Like, because like we know Jay doesn't like Kenny. We've seen that. Yeah. They've had matches in New Japan, so it goes into that.
The Bucks brought it up.
Yeah, which. The Bucks are clearly like they're for Kenny, so they're very confused on like why would Cole do this? And the funny thing is like and I don't want to get into this too heavy, but all the people hating on Cole and like how he's been booked or whatever is insane because if you actually pay attention, like Cole's playing everything. Like, Cole is like the puppet master. He's playing the Bucks here. He brought in Jay White, which is another side of the Bullet Club.
Brought in Bobby Fish and Kyle O'Reilly.
Yeah, and then he's also doing he's also got that in his back pocket of like the Undisputed Era stuff. It's like Cole has outlets on like which direction, whatever he wants to do, wherever he wants to go. And no one really knows what he's doing. But in reality, like Cole's the one kind of running the show.
Yeah.
He's doing all this.
And that's what Cole emphasized. And like it was crazy because even when Kenny left, like Kenny was like, if you go back to that the Dynamite after Kenny lost the title, Kenny played it off like he didn't know that the Bucks, gave the nod, gave the okay to Paige to win the belt, and then he had made a point to tell the Bucks to hold it down while he was gone, and Cole answered for him.
Yeah, I mean they've done enough to really play into like that whole story, and this just adds to it. It's another layer.
And it was funny because the Bucks didn't really react back when Kenny made that comment. Like the Bucks were just like trying to keep it cool, trying to play it off. Now the Bucks are the ones doing it. like they told Cole on Wednesday. They said, what's Kenny gonna think about that? Kenny don't like, Kenny and Jay White, have history. They don't get along.
Well, and
right?
then they
so now it's
played up that like Cole didn't even give him a heads up. Like you could have told us, dude. And he didn't. And like the funny thing is like there's two options here, really. I mean, is Cole really that naive and he doesn't realize what he's doing, or is he actually smarter than everyone in the room? And it's probably going to be the latter. Or it's probably and it's probably going to end up being that Cole, he's doing this on purpose because my thinking is where it ends up with him in particular is like he's doing this on purpose because like Cole didn't forget that they kicked him out. Like that's not water under the bridge for him. So he's doing all this stuff to sow all this chaos, and then we're going to see where he really ends up going. And you know what? Who even knows what's going to happen with like the Undisputed Era stuff? Because like that's cool and all too, but like we can't forget that he had a pretty big beef with Kyle O'Reilly too.
Yeah.
So Cole be just using this to like using everyone just his own benefit because he's also getting a title shot next.
Yeah.
I mean,
which
into the main event.
Yeah, which just you and I'm going to touch on the main event here in a second. I wanted to, I wanted to bring up the thing about this Jay White thing. We mentioned how Tony misused the word or the phrase "forbidden door." Tony admitted to it. He was like, "Hey, I got a little excited. I flubbed up, so I wanted to make this extra special for the fans." He had just signed Jay White Sunday.
Well, agreed to bring him in.
Agreed. Yeah, they had a verbal agreement. Because like we've talked about, Tony has said in the past that he likes to do his signings in person, which is awesome.
Well, Jay's not signed. You know that, right?
Yeah, no.
They just brought him in. Like he's still under like a New Japan contract. He's just been in the States for a really long time. Yeah.
So I just kind of like how I kind of like how Tony just kind of sprinkled that in. It's kind of like a thing to say. Hey, I wanted to make sure that the fans got something special because we promised. And we overpromised. We didn't want to underdeliver. So I thought that was awesome.
Yeah, it was cool. I mean, that's the one cool thing about that company is when they said that they would listen, they really do. And they do they have now like a history of trying to like, fix things and satisfy people or whatever. And this was just one of those instances that, and he over delivered. I mean, bringing in Jay White is a big deal. I mean, even if people haven't really seen him, like when they do, like that dude's good. I mean, he's really good. And again, he adds another layer to a story that already has a million of them and could go in a million different directions. I'm excited for when they do something big with him and he has like a big match because I'm a big Jay White fan. And Tony did say like we're going to be seeing a lot of him in the future. So,
well,
what's to come?
Yeah, and he was on. They've been doing a lot of stuff with Impact and Bullet Club. I didn't plan on talking about that, but that's if you haven't watched Impact, it's a good. It was a good episode this week. I did want to talk about this CM Punk tag match because
I honestly thought it was the best match on the show. I thought the main event was really, really good, but I had the most fun with this match.
So I did too, and you and I talked, and my case for CM Punk being one of the best wrestlers, because of all the different things that we look at with wrestling, and I one of my favorite sound bites from last week was you talking about that love letter that Punk wrote, and he just finds ways to do it, whether it's the callback to Diesel and Bret Hart, or callbacks to Piper, or the callbacks to the stuff he did last week. He did it again this week. I don't know if you noticed or not, but his tag team partner wound up being Moxley. They did the spot where they hit each other back to back. That was a spot from one of the Royal Rumbles they were in.
Which is cool. It's cool they call that back too, because Punk also over there. Remember he had that story where he
hired the Shield.
Yeah, he hired the Shield. So it's kind of I saw a lot of jokes on Twitter about that. Like, how long is this retainer?
Yeah.
Like, dude still got the Shield coming in and helping him out. Which is cool. I feel like I really enjoyed that it ended up being Moxley. I mean, it would have been cool to get Joe or somebody like that, but like Moxley was like the perfect dude that like when you thought it was going to be a surprise and then it ended up being Moxley, like it was very like it was still like he's one of the dudes who like still made it very satisfying.
So in what I noticed a lot on like Twitter, and there was even some news articles of people, the trunks that Punk wore, a lot of people called back to Royal Rumble 2010 when he was, straight edge society. He wore those red trunks in the Royal Rumble. I think people slipped up a little bit, or at least like the articles I saw where, some of these wrestling writers were like, hey, this was a callback to Royal Rumble 2010. It was actually a callback, I think, to TLC 2013 when Punk had a 3-on-1 handicap match against the Shield.
I don't even remember that.
And he wore those red trunks. And there was a highlighted spot in that match where him and Moxley went at it. And it was, it was kind of one of those moments where a lot of wrestling fans saw like, hey, Moxley's going to be awesome in WWE. Like this Dean Ambrose has a future here.
I also like that. I mean, they didn't really draw like crazy attention to it, and I think that that's pretty smart. They didn't have to, but I think it makes sense too because it's like Moxley's recently sober, and Punk is obviously straight edge and doesn't drink, so it's like they have like now they have like a different type of connection where it's like, all right, like so he went and got Moxley because it's kind of like a little cool thing where it's like it made it kind of like in a weird way kind of makes sense. And then at the same time, it's just like, I absolutely love the way Punk came out, and he was just pumped for numerous reasons. I mean, storyline reason is, mainly is like, these guys are fucked. I got John Moxley. Dude doesn't give a shit. Like he's going to, and he's really good. Like they didn't think I'd get anybody, and I got John Moxley. Like no one saw that coming. And then at the same time, like I kind of liked that, like Punk just seemed like, he seemed absolutely thrilled to just be able to tag with the guy.
Yeah.
Like he just knew coming out, like these guys are fucked and this is going to be awesome.
Yeah, because according to Punk, calling back to his interview he did on Colt's podcast after he left WWE, according to Punk, the Shield was mainly his idea. He had 3 guys. Now, one of them wound up being different. His 3 guys were Tyler Black, Seth Rollins, John Moxley, Dean Ambrose, and Chris Hero, who wound up coming up as Cassius Oh No. But they went with his idea, but they traded out Chris Hero with Roman Reigns. So that there's always been some type of admiration there from Punk to Moxley. It's just crazy, man, because like you think like these matches hold so much. Punk all around has always been, he's fantastic telling a story outside of the ring. He's a fantastic telling a story in the ring. And that's what makes him one of the best to do it. And telling that story in the ring, the theatrics, the choreography of what professional wrestling is inside those ropes, with the moves and and just the way they plan it out. to sprinkle, to add that little like that that sauce on top of callbacks to things that like you just wouldn't think about. Wearing the same trunks as when you fought in the ring with him in another company, doing a spot that you guys did together in the ring in another company, and the Bret Hart and the Diesel stuff. It's absolutely mind-boggling that Punk is 40-something years old and still I don't know if I want to say that. Punk is 40-something years old, and I think this is the best stuff Punk is putting on in the past 15 years.
I kind of think so too, honestly. I mean, we're still pretty early into his run. I mean, he debuted only a few months ago, but so far, like, I mean, this is now that he's definitely got his bearings about him and he's going like, and like the wheels are oiled now. Like, I mean, he's wrestling consistently again. I mean, he's as good as ever. I mean, his selling maybe the best in the game, and this like the stories he's telling. I just think this is just Punk having a blast with wrestling again, and it's him being completely. I mean, he was really good in WWE. Don't get me wrong, but like this is him like 100% unshackled, being able to put together what he 100% wants to, and he's just really good. I mean, I think this run for sure is like cementing his legacy as like a guy who was already going to go down as like one of the greats ever, but like this is only like raising him up the ladder. I mean, it's kind of crazy how good he is, especially when like you can tell like, and you've always kind of known this, like he's not the most athletic dude, like compared to a lot of guys. But man, he's just really, really good. And his old school style, I mean, it just makes him so like different in this era, and he stands out so much. And like I saw someone bring up the point of like they were trying to be, defiant about like the Punk thing, and somebody was saying like, his old school style, is it kind of sets him apart. And someone said, well, what makes it set him apart? Like the stuff he does to me is like boring. And somebody was like, well, it's because it's so different. And like the argument is like Punk's so smart that if everyone started to do like an old school style and like to fit like what he's doing, he would probably do something completely different because he's just so intelligent. And like he knows that this old school stuff in this era, it's new again. Like a lot of these younger fans don't know, they don't see it. And like there's no knock on like the guys doing like big spots and stuff. Like that's what gets you over. It's like that's what gets you remembered. Like Jungle Boy coming out before we knew him, like doing like crazy stuff. It was like that's how we remember Jungle Boy. But like Punk is just so intelligent, and like I do agree with you. Like I think that this is probably like the best version of him that we maybe have ever seen. I mean, he's always been really good, but he's great.
Like, you always wonder how wrestlers like choreograph those things, and you always hear about them doing stories of, like, hey, so-and-so and I went out, we talked about what we were going to do. We talked about this, we talked about that. I would kill to be a fly on the wall while Punk and MJF were choreographing that match. While they're just talking about it back and forth, and Punk is like, yo, like I'm gonna do this. And obviously I'm sure Punk like reiterated to him, like, hey, this is a callback to that, a callback to this. I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. Like just to be a fly on the wall and watch him, I would bet every last dollar I have that he's just grinning from ear to ear or like doing that. Which I forgot to bring this up, and we'll move on from this match because I think I've fangirled over Punk enough. But did you notice that MJF at the beginning of the show made a comment about him whispering in Punk's ear and played it off like?
I thought that was awesome. We definitely saw that people saw him like say pays respect to Punk. I thought that was cool.
Yeah. So, moving on. It was a damn good match, probably one of the best of the night. I did want to talk about, just AQA, that girl they had fight against Jade Cargill. The match wasn't stellar. But I did want to bring up, because I made a note about this. Her shooting star press was pretty fantastic. And a shooting star press has always been awesome to me. I always mark out every single time I see somebody do a shooting star press, just because I love the move.
Yeah, hers was really good. I mean, it's a dangerous move, but if if you can hit it, it looks awesome. Hers was really good. I thought she looked pretty good. She's obviously pretty young, but they officially signed her. I saw the graphic, so I think they wanted to showcase her in this match because they did get more time than I thought. But
they made a big deal because she was trained by Booker T, and so the main event I thought was fantastic. Like I said, I do agree with you. I did think the tag team match was like a better overall match, just because, like we said about what all Punk did in it. But the Texas Death Match had some great spots.
It was a lot of fun. It's just the tag match to me personally was a little bit more fun, but like this was great.
Yeah. And probably my favorite, like, I wouldn't say my favorite spot, but a spot that just kind of like made me cringe was when Archer did the blackout to Paige on the steps outside of the ring.
Yeah, it's great. It's honestly super crazy that he took it so well.
Yeah,
like he honestly, like, that spot probably sucked. Like, I'm sure it hurt. I'm sure it was but
that was
for like
crazy.
For like the way he took it, like he took it as best as possible, I thought. I mean, he landed pretty flat. He kind of came off the steps like in an okay spot, like position, I guess. Like I said, I'm sure it was brutal, but yeah, that spot was nuts. I mean, there was a lot of crazy spots, like the barbed wire they brought in, obviously like the tables and stuff, which played a part later. Lambert coming out and taking off the top rope to like, so Paige couldn't do the buckshot. I thought Paige played a really good role whenever he came. They were working outside, and then he came back to the ring, and he tried to pull himself up by the top rope, and it wasn't there. And then that's when he realized, like, he was kind of made a face like, what the hell happened? And then you can see it kind of hit him like, oh,
yeah,
like I see what they're doing here. I thought that was really smart. I didn't absolutely love that he hit the buckshot early, but Archer did roll out of the ring, so it did kind of play into like, hey, the buckshot's super dangerous. Like, he could have beat him. I mean, he hit it with him early. So like that ended up being okay to me. But yeah, and then Paige, that dude bleeds, man. When he cuts it, when he blades, it's brutal, dude. Like he gets covered like pretty quick.
Yeah. And the final spots of that match, where he found a way to do the buckshot over the referee.
I thought it was super smart. Yeah, I thought it was super smart. I like that he put the barbed wire around his arm so he could get out of it, because like Archer picked him up, and then he kind of, or he was on the ground. Then he did the forearms with the barbed wire, and I thought, and then he dropped it, knowing that the ref would bend over to pick it up, and then he used them. I thought that was like a really clever way to set it up, and then he hit it just perfect. And if you remember, we've seen that before. He did it in Stadium Stampede when Kenny bent over.
Yep.
So he's used that before. And then to go through the tables, that, kind of was like the icing on the cake that, like, and I got to say, man, like, I know a lot of people, like, there's a lot of people who are like, why is Archer getting a title shot and whatever? But in these types of matches, like, Archer's really good. I mean, he really excels in this type of stuff. And I think he understands his role of, like, he can have these, like, kind of like hot shotted, like, title matches or like big matches or whatever. And like, he knows his job is to make like the babyface look really good. And I thought he did a really good job here. And a lot of people were complaining like, oh, he shouldn't have got a title shot, whatever. But it's like, he also had a match similar to this with Moxley, whenever that was, and he won the New Japan US title. So they definitely like had a history of him being really good in these types of matches, and they're making him like they're kind of his. And I thought this just added to it. I mean, I thought he was pretty brutal in this match, and I thought it was laid out really, really well. And like, it only had whatever it had, like 15 minutes in the show whenever it went on, so it was just like an insane pace. And I thought everything really worked. And Hangman's really good. I mean, I feel like this title reign, like I feel like a lot of people aren't giving him like full credit, thinking that it's been a dud since like he won it. But I think a lot of that is like the chase was so good that like it's tough. But that dude went into 2 crazy Danielson matches, and now he's had this crazy match with Archer. Like, and the dude just doesn't miss, man. Like Hangman's he's really, really good, and he deserves more credit.
Agreed. Yeah, I'll tell you what, man. This Dynamite was one of the best. It was probably one of my favorites. I would give this show, if I was grading it on a scale from 1 to 10, I'd give it an 8.6. And when I say 8.6, people have to understand, like a 10 is unachievable on a scale from 1 to 10. On a legit scale, a 10 would be the perfect show, and you're never going to get that. So it's, to grade it realistically, I'd say probably an 8.6.
I thought it was like a 9.5. It was really good. I mean, I thought from top to bottom, like they started off at a pretty big high with that first segment, and I don't think they really ever dropped off. I mean, you're going to have a couple of segments that like obviously aren't at like the highest of highs, but I thought the whole show was great. Well, and then, obviously, like the one last thing was just Cole came out after, basically challenged Hangman. So we got that next. But, like, yeah, the whole show is fantastic. I mean, it was one of the better Dynamites. I think it's up there probably with a few others. I mean, but it's in rarefied air right now. I mean, this was a peak show, I thought.
Yeah. And it's crazy because, like you said, a peak show. It reminded me of like, not reminding me, but I saw a lot of people like comparing it to a pay-per-view and just saying like, yo, why would you give all of this away on free TV? Why not?
Yeah. I mean, really, like it's a different mentality. I mean,
yeah.
TV, these TV deals and stuff. I mean, it's what pays the bills and the ratings and all that. It's what pays the bills. It's not the pay-per-views anymore. I mean, it's kind of reversed. So and this is what Tony.
You're gonna get.
So they put big matches on television.
Yeah, you're gonna get a big match on a pay-per-view. So it's nice to get those. It's nice to get those big event, or for them to treat Dynamites and Rampages every once in a while like big events. Yeah, to kind of just wrap up here, because I know we're right at we're a little over the two hour mark. I did want to talk about how big AEW's roster is, but I'll leave that as a teaser for next week's episode. I think what we'll finish with is GCW announced that their first contract, this is the first contract they have, was given to their guy, Nick Gage. And kind of just wanted to, just reflect on that a little bit. Obviously that's
for him. I mean, he's obviously their guy. He's taken a million bumps in however long he's been doing it, 20 plus years. I saw that they said they'll probably never do a contract again either, but they felt like it was appropriate for him, and he's going to be working reduced dates with it. So, I mean, good for him, good for them. I mean, it's a cool move. It's a cool gesture to lock him down, because I'm sure it gives him like different opportunities, signing a deal like that and making sure he's going to be making all that money. And it's kind of a nod to him for what he's done for them. So it's a cool move, I think.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I wanted to talk about how smart it was. They let him go and get exposure. A lot of people didn't know who Nick Gage was. until MJF called his name out on AEW television. And now there's a lot of the wrestling community now that know who Nick Gage is. So for them to lock him down, it was super smart in my mind. It was a good move on them. For Game Changer Wrestling, if they want to grow, that idea to put him, in that match or not to put him in that situation to sign him as an exclusive to them was big.
Yeah, I think they've dealt the whole situation pretty smartly, and they know that he's, for that fan base especially, like, he's their guy. So, like I said, I think it's a pretty cool deal.
Yep. And then on that note, my friend, I think this is where we wrap it up.
Yes, sir.
I think we are all done here, and I don't have anything else. Anything from you, my friend?
No, I mean, there's some good things on the horizon that we'll be talking about.
Absolutely.
Some things we talked about tonight. We're setting up some nice things in the future, so looking forward to the next few weeks for sure. But
yep, we've got that super exciting pay-per-view, or my bad, that super exciting premium live event, Elimination Chamber next weekend. So that'll be fun. Like I said, we'll talk about
like a different way.
Yeah.
In a very different way than we talked about Wednesday's Dynamite. That's for sure.
Yeah, and we'll talk about AEW's roster, and we'll talk about the aftermath of UFC 271 and go from there.
The build for Revolution, we're officially kicking that off, so that should be good.
Yep.
Yeah, like I said, dude, the next few weeks should be really good.
Yeah, man. So other than that, if that's all you got, I'm good there. Again, my name is Chase with CR Media. If you're watching, you see the tagline CR Media 1988. That is my social media handle on everything. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Twitch, and TikTok. This is my friend Seth Hackett. That is his Twitter handle right there, Seth_Hackett. Tweet him, let him know he did a good job. He's gonna leave here. If you're watching, you see Seth get up. He's wearing a black hoodie and a black beanie. He's gonna go rob somebody's grandma when he gets off of here.
I don't know why you got to expose me on video like that.
Pleasure as always, my friend. Like I said, we are having fun with this. Super excited to keep doing this series with you. Again, my name is Chase. This is Seth. For CR Media, this was Bad Booking. Peace out.